I remember the day I found out about her affair as if it were etched into my memory in indelible ink. It was a Saturday, the kind of day that promised warmth but delivered only a chilly wind. I had planned to surprise her with a picnic in the park, a gesture meant to rekindle the spark that had dimmed over the years. But instead of laughter and shared stories, I stumbled upon a truth that shattered my world. I returned home early from the grocery store, the scent of fresh strawberries wafting through the air as I pushed open the door. The house was unusually silent, and for a moment I felt an unsettling chill creep up my spine. I called out her name, expecting a cheerful response, but the only answer was the echo of my voice bouncing off the walls. I walked towards our bedroom, and that was when I saw it. The door was ajar, and through the crack I could see her, my wife, Emily, entangled in the sheets with another man. My heart plummeted, a heavy stone sinking into a bottomless abyss. The man was a stranger to me, a rugged figure with tousled hair and a camera slung around his neck. A wildlife photographer, I later learned. It felt like a cruel twist of fate that the one thing I had prided myself on, my understanding of nature, my passion for photography, had been weaponized against me. Time slowed as I stood frozen in place, my breath hitching in my throat. I wanted to scream, to shout her name, to demand an explanation, but all I could manage was a silent, agonizing disbelief. I had often heard that the worst pain was the kind that crept up on you when you least expected it, and I was now living proof of that adage. I stumbled back, retreating to the kitchen, my heart racing as I struggled to process the betrayal unfolding just a few feet away. I felt a surge of anger mixed with a profound sadness. How could she do this to me? Images of our life together flooded my mind, the vacations, the laughter, the shared dreams. They all felt like a cruel joke now, a facade hiding the truth that lay beneath. As I leaned against the cool countertop, the weight of betrayal pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. I could hear their muffled laughter through the wall, a sound that twisted the knife deeper into my heart. I wanted to furiously confront her, to demand answers, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Instead, I felt paralyzed, trapped in a whirlwind of emotions: rage, sorrow, disbelief, and a creeping sense of humiliation. In that moment, I made a decision. I would not confront her right away. I needed time to think, to gather my thoughts. I needed to understand how I had missed the signs, how I had allowed myself to be so blind. As I stood there, I felt a cold resolve begin to take shape within me. The man she had chosen over me would pay for this. I didn't know how yet, but I felt a dark satisfaction bloom in my chest at the thought of revenge. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm inside me. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to gather evidence, to lay a trap that would expose both of them for what they truly were. As I walked away from the kitchen, my mind raced with possibilities. My heart was heavy, but it was also beginning to harden. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed, but for me, everything had. The sun shone brightly, oblivious to the chaos unraveling in my life. I was just a man who had been wronged, and I would make sure that this wildlife photographer would never take another shot again. Emily and I had always been the kind of couple that others envied. We met in college, both studying environmental science, and our shared passion for nature brought us together. Our first date was a hike through the Appalachian Trail, where we laughed under the canopy of trees, our conversations flowing as freely as the streams we crossed. We spent countless weekends exploring national parks, camping under the stars, and taking photographs of wildlife. Our lives were intertwined in a beautiful tapestry of shared experiences and mutual respect. After graduation, we married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. We bought a cozy little house on the outskirts of town, where we planted a garden and filled the rooms with laughter. For a time, it felt like we were living in a dream. But as the years passed, that dream began to fray at the edges. Life had a way of creeping in, didn't it? The pressures of work, the monotony of routine, and the unrelenting march of time began to take their toll. I worked long hours at a conservation organization, pouring my heart into projects aimed at protecting endangered species. Emily, meanwhile, found herself swept up in her own career as a wildlife biologist. We both shared a love for our work, but the very things that had once brought us together started to pull us apart. I noticed the little things first, the way she would come home late, her excuses becoming more elaborate. I lost track of time at the lab, she would say with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I brushed it off, convincing myself that she was simply dedicated to her work. But deep down, I felt a nagging discomfort, a whisper of doubt that I tried to silence. Then there were the changes in her demeanor. Emily used to be so open, sharing every detail of her day with me. But lately, she had become distant, her laughter less frequent, her smiles more fleeting. I tried to initiate conversations about our lives, our future, but she often seemed distracted, lost in thoughts I couldn't penetrate. I would watch her gaze drift out the window, her mind clearly elsewhere. As the months turned into years, we drifted further apart. We argue over trivial things, where to go for dinner, whose turn it was to do the dishes, but those arguments masked a deeper rift. I felt the warmth of our love cool, replaced by a thickening tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud. I was desperate to reignite the spark, to remind her of the love we once shared, but every attempt seemed futile. Then came the wildlife photographer. His name was Jack, a charismatic man who had a reputation for capturing stunning images of animals in their natural habitats. I had heard Emily mention him in passing, her eyes lighting up with admiration for his work. I should have felt a sense of camaraderie, a fellow lover of nature, but instead I felt a twinge of jealousy. It was irrational, I told myself. I trusted Emily, but as I later learned, trust can blind you to the truth. I remember one particular evening when she returned home with a new book he had written. "You should read this," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "He's so talented." I smiled and nodded, but inside a voice whispered warnings. The way she spoke about him, the admiration in her voice, it felt different. It felt intimate. Looking back, I can see the signs more clearly, each one like a puzzle piece that fell into place with painful clarity. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way she would smile at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I had dismissed them as the quirks of a busy life, but they were the red flags I had ignored in my naivety. Now, standing in the kitchen after witnessing her betrayal, I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. I had loved her fiercely, and yet here I was, betrayed by the woman I had trusted with my heart. The memories of our laughter, our shared dreams, and our love felt like a cruel mockery of the reality I faced now. As I pondered the state of our marriage, I felt a darkness begin to creep in. I had once believed in love and loyalty, but now those ideals felt like shards of glass, cutting into me with every thought. I was no longer the man who had taken her hand in marriage. I was a husband betrayed, determined to seek justice for the hurt I had endured. With each passing moment, my resolve to act hardened. I would not let this go unpunished. I would expose the truth, not just for myself, but for the sanctity of our marriage that she had so callously disregarded. The night was heavy with tension as I prepared to confront Emily. I had spent the entire day in a haze, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and revenge. I replayed the scene in the bedroom over and over, each time feeling the same gut-wrenching pain. I knew I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to confront her. The truth had to be spoken, even if it shattered the fragile remnants of our marriage. When she finally walked through the door that evening, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I was standing in the living room, arms crossed, waiting for her. The moment she saw me, her smile faltered and I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. It was as if she sensed the storm brewing inside me. "Hey, you're home early," she said, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but laced with an underlying tension. Her expression shifted, concern replacing the casualness. "About what?" "About you and Jack." The name tasted bitter on my tongue, and I relished the way her face paled. "What do you mean?" she stammered, her eyes darting away from mine. I took a step closer, feeling the anger boiling beneath the surface. "Don't play games with me, Emily. I saw you. I saw the two of you together." Her breath hitched, and for a moment she looked like a deer caught in headlights. I can explain," she said, her voice trembling. Explain what? I demanded, my voice rising. How you betrayed me, how you let a stranger into our bed, what could possibly justify that? Tears welled up in her eyes and I felt a pang of something. Was it empathy? No, it was anger. Anger that she could still look so innocent despite the betrayal she had committed. It was. Like that, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a moment of weakness. A moment of weakness, I echoed incredulously. You think that justifies sleeping with another man? You think I would just stand by and accept that? She took a step back, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. Love, I scoffed, the word feeling foreign in my mouth. What you did wasn't love, it was selfishness. It was betrayal. I was lonely, she shouted suddenly, her voice rising in desperation. You were always busy with work and I felt neglected. I didn't mean to fall for him, but he was there and he understood me in ways you didn't. Her words struck deep, and I felt the pain of her admission like a physical blow. I had known things were strained between us, but to hear her say it so plainly felt like a knife twisting in my gut. So you chose to sleep with him instead of talking to me. Instead of working on our marriage. I didn't know how, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I thought I could fix it on my own. I thought I could find happiness elsewhere. Did you find it? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Did you find happiness in his arms? Emily's silence spoke volumes. I watched as the weight of her choices crashed down on her, the realization of what she had done settling into her bones. I'm sorry, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for it to go this far. Sorry doesn't cut it, I replied coldly, feeling the distance between us grow. You've destroyed everything we built together. You've shattered my trust, and I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. The tears streamed down her face as she struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Please, just give me a chance to make it right. We can work through this. I'll do anything. But the anger within me had transformed into a steely resolve. You had your chance, Emily. You made your choice. Now it's my turn to make mine. With those words, I turned away from her, feeling the walls of our home close in around me, suffocating me with memories of what once was. The confrontation had left me hollow, but it also ignited a fire within me, a desire for revenge that I could no longer ignore. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a sense of clarity. I would not let her betrayal go unpunished. Jack would pay for what he had taken from me, and I would make sure the world knew the truth about him. The plan began to form in my mind, each detail falling into place like the pieces of a puzzle. I would gather evidence, expose their affair, and ensure that Jack's reputation as a wildlife photographer would be tarnished forever. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity, I was fighting for justice. The days following my confrontation with Emily were a blur of anger and determination. I had never envisioned myself as a vengeful person, but betrayal has a way of altering one's moral compass. I spent countless hours plotting my next steps, my mind racing with dark thoughts. I wanted to hurt Jack. He had hurt me, to expose him for the fraud he truly was. I was no longer just a man betrayed. I was a man on a mission. I began by researching Jack. He had a well-known reputation in the wildlife photography community, celebrated for his breathtaking images of animals in their natural habitats. His work had been featured in prestigious magazines, and he had received awards for his stunning captures. I scoured the internet for any articles, interviews, or photographs I could find. The more I learned about him, the more I understood how to bring him down. The first thing I did was reach out to a few friends in the media. I had connections from my own work in conservation, and I knew that if I played my cards right, I could use them to my advantage. I crafted a story that was both scandalous and enticing, one that would pique the interest of editors at Nature magazines. I presented Jack not as a talented photographer, but as a man who preyed on vulnerable women, using his charm and status to seduce them. I collected evidence of his affair with Emily, photos, messages, and emails that detailed their rendezvous. I had been careful to document everything, knowing that I needed a solid case to make my accusations stick. Each time I found another piece of evidence, I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was not just about revenge. It was about taking control of my life again, about reclaiming my dignity. The moral implications of my plan weighed heavily on me. I knew I was crossing a line, that what I was doing could ruin Jack's career and possibly his life. But the pain of Emily's betrayal overshadowed any guilt I felt. I reminded myself that he had chosen to betray me first. He had taken something irreplaceable from me, and now it was my turn to take something from him. As I sat in front of my laptop, drafting emails to various magazines, I felt a sense of power building within me. I was no longer the victim. I was the one holding the cards. I crafted my message carefully, weaving in details of Jack's deception and infidelity, ensuring that each word was laced with the venom I felt. I was a man wronged, and I intended to make sure that everyone knew it. I hit send on the first email, and a rush of adrenaline coursed through me. I knew I was stepping into a dangerous game, one that could have unforeseen consequences. But I felt justified, righteous in my pursuit of revenge. I was determined to expose Jack for who he truly was, a man who had violated not just my marriage but the trust of countless others. As the days turned into weeks, my emails began to yield results. Several magazines expressed interest in the story, eager to cover the scandal. They wanted the juicy details, the salacious angles, and I was more than willing to provide them. I had become the architect of my own revenge, meticulously constructing a narrative that would ensure Jack's downfall. I watched as the pieces fell into place, feeling a mix of satisfaction and dread. I had become so consumed by my need for vengeance that I barely recognized myself. The man who had once been filled with love and trust had been replaced by someone darker, someone willing to destroy another person's life to soothe his own wounds. But even as I reveled in my plan, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease creeping in. What if this went too far? What if I lost myself completely in this quest for revenge? Would it be worth it? But every time those questions arose, I pushed them aside. I couldn't allow myself to feel sympathy for Jack. He had taken my wife, and in doing so, he had taken my happiness. I was in too deep now. The magazines were beginning to publish pieces based on my information, and I could see the fallout beginning. Jack's reputation was starting to crack, and I felt a sense of triumph wash over me. I was the one pulling the strings, and it felt intoxicating. But as I sat back and watched the chaos unfold, I couldn't help but wonder, what would happen when the dust finally settled? What kind of man would I be left with once the revenge had been executed? It wasn't long before the first article hit the stands. The headline screamed of scandal, of betrayal, and of a wildlife photographer who had used his charm to seduce a married woman. I felt a sick thrill rush through me as I read the piece, my heart pounding with a mix of exhilaration and dread. I had orchestrated this, I had taken control of my narrative, and now Jack was being dragged into the spotlight, exposed for his infidelity. The article detailed the affair, painting Jack as a predator. It included quotes from anonymous sources, murmurs of his reputation among women in the field, and hints of other indiscretions that hinted at a pattern of behavior. I had fed the magazines just enough to tantalize their audience, and they lapped it up eagerly. I could almost hear the gasp of readers as they flipped through the pages, their eyes widening in shock at the revelation of Jack's duplicity. As the weeks passed, more magazines picked up the story, each one adding fuel to the fire. Jack's name became synonymous with scandal, and I watched as his carefully crafted image crumbled. His social media accounts were flooded with comments from outraged fans and followers, demanding answers, expressing their disappointment. It was a sight I relished, a sweet vindication for the pain he had caused me. But amidst the thrill, there was a darkness creeping in. I began to receive phone calls from various media outlets, reporters eager to get more details about the affair, about my perspective as the betrayed husband. I found myself in front of cameras, recounting my story with a mix of anger and sorrow. Each time I spoke, I felt a sense of power, but it was tinged with an unsettling realization. I was becoming the villain in my own story. Jack's response was swift. He issued a public statement denying the allegations, claiming that the articles were fabrications, the product of a jealous husband seeking revenge. I could see the wheels of his defense turning. He was trying to shift the narrative back in his favor. But it was too late. The damage was done. His reputation was already tarnished, and whispers of his misconduct spread like wildfire through the photography community. As I watched the fallout unfold, I felt a mix of satisfaction and dread. I had succeeded in my revenge, but at what cost? I had unleashed chaos, not just on Jack, but on myself as well. Emily was a ghost in our home, a shadow of the woman I had once loved. We barely spoke, our conversations reduced to awkward exchanges about bills and household chores. The intimacy that had once defined our relationship was now replaced by a chasm of hurt and betrayal. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the weight of my actions settled heavily on my shoulders. I had wanted to hurt Jack, to make him pay for what he had done, but now I was beginning to question the morality of my actions. I had become so consumed by revenge that I had lost sight of the man I once was. I was no longer just a husband wronged. I was a man who had chosen to destroy another person's life to alleviate my own pain. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a reporter seeking an exclusive interview. I hesitated, the temptation to bask in the attention battling with the gnawing guilt that had taken root in my heart. I could feel the darkness of my choices closing in around me, and I realized that this wasn't the victory I had imagined. I declined the interview, feeling a flicker of hope that perhaps I could still salvage something from the wreckage of my life. Maybe it wasn't too late to confront Emily, to find a way to heal from this together. But when I turned to share my thoughts with her, I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes red from crying. "Is this what you wanted?" she asked, her voice trembling. "To ruin him, to ruin us?" "No," I admitted, my heart heavy. "I wanted justice. I wanted him to pay for what he did to us." "But at what cost?" she replied, her voice breaking. "You've turned into someone I barely recognize. You're consumed by this hatred, and I don't know how to reach you anymore." Her words struck me like a lightning bolt, illuminating the shadows I had been hiding from. I had wanted revenge, but in doing so, I had lost the very essence of who I was. As the reality of my actions settled in, I felt a wave of regret wash over me. I had wanted to destroy Jack, but I was destroying myself in the process. I needed to find a way to reclaim my life, to heal from the betrayal, instead of allowing it to fester into something darker. The consequences of my actions were finally becoming clear. Revenge had not brought me peace. It had only deepened the wounds I had been trying to heal. I needed to confront the truth, not just about Jack, but about my marriage and my own heart. As I looked into Emily's eyes, I knew I had to make a choice. Would I continue down this path of destruction, or would I find a way to forgive, to rebuild, and to reclaim the love we once had? The answers were elusive, but I felt the first stirrings of hope. It was time to stop running and start facing the truth. In the days that followed, I began to confront the reality of my situation. The whirlwind of revenge I had unleashed had left me feeling hollow, and the man I had become was unrecognizable. I realized that I had been so focused on hurting Jack that I had neglected the most important relationship in my life, the one with Emily. Sitting across from her in the dim light of our living room, I could see the pain etched into her features. She had been my partner, my confidant, and now she was a woman caught in the crossfire of my rage. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words, knowing that this conversation would define the future of our marriage. "Emily," I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion, "I need to apologize. I let my anger take control, and I've hurt you in ways I never intended. I thought I could find solace in revenge, but all I've done is create more pain." She looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's not just about Jack, is it? It's about us. We've both let our marriage slip through our fingers. I thought we could work through things, but I felt so alone." "I know," I replied, my heart aching at the truth of her words. "I've been so consumed by my own hurt that I failed to see how you were suffering too. I should have been there for you instead of pushing you away. I'm sorry for that." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared pain hanging heavy in the air. It was a moment of reckoning, one that forced us to confront the cracks in our foundation. I knew that rebuilding would take time and effort, but I was willing to fight for us. I do. Want to lose you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I want to find a way to heal together. I want to understand what went wrong and work through it, even if it means facing the truth about our shortcomings. Emily nodded slowly, her expression softening. I want that too. I miss us. I miss the love we had, but we need to be honest with each other. We can't keep pretending everything is okay. With each passing day, we began to peel back the layers of our relationship, addressing the issues that had driven us apart. We talked late into the night, sharing our fears, our insecurities, and the moments when we had felt most alone. It was painful and raw, but it was necessary. I learned about the loneliness Emily had felt, how my long hours at work had created a void she had tried to fill with her work and ultimately with Jack. I shared my own struggles, how I had buried myself in my passion for conservation, thinking that it would bring us closer when, in reality, it had pushed us further apart. As weeks turned into months, the healing process was gradual but transformative. We sought couples therapy, learning to communicate openly and honestly. It was hard work, but with each session, I could feel the walls between us crumbling. We began to rediscover each other, rekindling the love that had once burned so brightly. I also made the decision to publicly retract my statements about Jack. I reached out to the magazines that had published the stories, explaining the truth of the situation and my motivations. It was a difficult choice, but I knew that perpetuating the cycle of revenge would only deepen the wounds. I wanted to take responsibility for my actions, to acknowledge that my pain had led me to make choices I was not proud of. The fallout from my decision was mixed. Some applauded my honesty, while others condemned me for backing down. But I knew that I had to do what was right for my own peace of mind and for the sake of my marriage. As for Jack, he faced the consequences of his actions, but I no longer reveled in his downfall. I realized that his choices were his own, and while he had hurt me, I could not allow myself to be defined by that pain. I had to let go of the anger that had consumed me, allowing space for healing and forgiveness. Reflecting on the journey I had taken, I understood that love is not just about the highs, but also about navigating the lows. It's about facing challenges together, acknowledging mistakes, and working to rebuild trust. It was a lesson I would carry with me for the rest of my life. Now, as I sit here with Emily, I feel a sense of peace settling over me. We have a long way to go, but we are committed to each other and to the work ahead. I can finally see a future where trust is rebuilt, where love is nurtured, and where the scars of betrayal serve as reminders of our resilience. In the end, I learned that revenge may feel satisfying in the moment, but true strength lies in forgiveness and the ability to rise above the pain. My marriage may never be the same, but it has the potential to be something even more beautiful, a testament to our ability to endure, to heal, and to love again. As I look into Emily's eyes, I see hope. Hope for a new beginning and a future where we can write our own story together, one filled with love, understanding, and the wisdom gained from our journey through the darkness. The storm has passed, and now it's time for the sun to shine again.